Hello, Chris,
Hello,
and
Csaba.
hello, everybody.
How you doing all? Hope you're having a glass in front of you, empty
Yes,
or full, because eventually it's going to get full and eventually it's going to get empty.
yes, exactly. We're having to taste the classic France selection of the tasting box, which now comes in 3 and 6 packs as well. You can see the 3 and the 6 pack behind me up on the shelf. This is quite a summery selection, I would say, with the rosé.
Yeah, I would agree. And for that reason, we're actually going to test them in order as they come on the paperwork. Because I wanted to bring to anyone's attention the one of the myth of this wine world as such. So anyway, let's start. So Côte de Provence Rosé. That's really interesting because it says on the label Cru Classé, and
Yeah.
most people will think, hang on a minute, what's that? Well, historically, and still today, in 1955, the same way that the same, well, 100 years later, but as well, Saint-Emilion was reclassified in 1955,
Yeah.
the Côte de Provence were classified as estates, and not especially for the rosé, but estate by estate. Obviously, being from that area in France, they were producing more rosé than white and red, but the rosé business as such came much later, really very much more in the 70s and the 80s, and then the rest is history as such. But they were more famous for red wine, white wine earlier on than rosé, even though the orientation existed already. So in 1955, 23 estates were classified as cru classé as such. Not grand, not exceptionnel, whatever, just cru classé. And today 18 remains. Some people just decided to walk out because they don't really like the idea, nor the pressure, or because there's obviously a cahier des charges to follow, so a set of rules that you have to apply to. But it's very interesting. It's there's a beautiful some really great one that you will know. Domaine Haute, for example, Le Clos Mirail is part of that. Rimoresque is part of them. Cladesclan is part of them. I mean, there's really beautiful selection of terroir there in the Cru Classé. So don't be worried when you see Cru Classé on a bottle of rosé. It's not just a way for you to spend more money because it says Cru Classé. It's also a true classification that comes from a legislation. You really, as I said, you have to follow a set of rules. It's not just marketing as such. So it's rather deep, and then you expect us also. So we all know in this country, we love rosé that is, very light. As soon as there's a bit color, oh, it's gonna be too big, too powerful. It can be. It's true. I mean, the color comes from the skin. So is the concentration. You basically put the skin and the liquid together, and you let macerate it as you would do a tea as such. And when you reach the color and the strength that you desire, you split both solid and liquid. In a nutshell, that's how you do it. Of course, some grape varieties such as Grenache, Mourvèdre, Vaccarez, which are the grape variety that you will find is that in this climate and in those locations, are also very colorific. The skin contains a lot of anthocyanin flavones, which are basically the color conductor, as well as tannin and so on. But let's focus on the point. And so, as a winemaker, you want to extract a bit more color, probably, but just a bit more oomph, especially when you tend to write Cru Classé on the label and you ask maybe a 3 or 5 quid extra at the till. So, I mean, personally, I don't mind because, again, it's not just the color, never judge a book on its cover. We all know that adage.
Just on color a little bit more, because when I poured the wine, I was a bit surprised actually, because Provence tend to be more of that sort of very pale style. Is that all with all Provence rosé, or most Provence rosé, or these guys doing a little bit different, or is it because it comes from a fairly different grape variety called Tiburon, I think it's called?
Yeah, Tiburon.
Tiburon, sorry, but excuse my French.
Tiburon. Yeah, Tiburon is a unique grape variety, again, quite thick-skinned and quite colorful. There is that aspect, but also, to be very fair, the market, especially the rosé market, follow the trend, and the trend is pale rosé. So those guys are doing basically against the trend, and they don't really care, because again, they've got Cru Classe written on their label, so they can do whatever they want, and they should do. And I think it's convincing enough in purely on the quality of the wine and the expression that you're after. If you think that the rosé, the color itself will imply to the quality of the wine, well, yes, there's truth into it. It gives you a lot of information, the color, but that's not just it. Maybe your rosé will be a bit closer than, you know, a light glass of red. That could be an orientation. And if you see your rosé as basically between a white and red as such, I think that's the perfect glass of wine. Of course, if it's sort of partying and barbecue style in a garden, I mean, rosé is rosé. You know, the point is that they are flavorful. You want them to have acidity, freshness, a lot of fruit, and you know, around the 12.5 max alcohol level. Here we are on
12.5.
12.5. You know, so again, despite the structure, the color structure as such, you tick all the boxes. But I can understand that the color can actually put people away, thinking, oh, wow, it's going to be too concentrated, too powerful for me. Now there is an aspect of the grape variety and the style you're achieving by this maceration time in order to pick up a bit more flavor. But again, I think it translates well onto the nose, because you have that kind of ripe character. You know, it's not just berries and strawberries and raspberries and you know, nothing much more. There is you know, quite a lot of character and fruit profile, exactly from the berries character, but there's a bit more cherries, there's a bit more plums as well. There's a touch of, for me, there's a bit of spices there.
Yeah, almost a hint of herbal. I don't usually get that sort of herbal notes on rosé.
Garrig's, you know, herbal, thyme, maybe sage aspect to it. Yeah, I agree. I would completely agree with that. And a touch of earthiness as well.
A very, very lovely wine, actually. I really enjoy these sort of styles. Obviously, it's not Tavel, but it almost reminds me, somewhere in the back of my mind, a Tavel with a bit more body.
It's a very, very, very fair call. Very, very fair call. Because Tavel, so Tavel is part of the southern Rhone. Tavel is not within the Provence boundaries. It's up north. So you've got Châteauneuf-du-Pape basically, and Tavel is locked to it at the bottom south. And Tavel, you know, historically has only produced rosé, and they don't produce rosé that are, you know, pale skinned. The rosé of Tavel have always, you know, that sort of darker, more profound, more kind of oeil de perdrix and kind of onion skin color, rather than the pale light pinkish that we see more and more and more and more in big brands throughout the UK and throughout the world, because that's a trend that people, you know, tend to go for, thinking it's going to be a light wine. But well, no, the flavor profile might be a bit watery. Yes, the wine might be a bit easier to drink, but it's still a 12.5% alcohol. It's still as much sugar in your glass of wine, and so on and so forth. So don't hide behind the label as to try to escape reality, if I may say. Well, not even a label, but a color. If you want to drink a glass of wine, drink something that is rather good. Life's too short to drink bad wine, as they say. But that's
actually
really good. I mean, that's a good
written on the box somewhere as well.
You know, that's a good
there we go.
yeah, it's
life
too
too
short
short.
for bad wine.
Yes.
You deserve the best. Yeah, it's true. Actually, the first one I heard that was an Austrian producer in Ilmitz. How was it called? It was completely crazy. But it's so true. It is so true, you know, and especially nowadays when you look at statistics of comparison of drinking, for the general population tends to drink much less than they used to everywhere in the world. But it means that people drink actually better wine.
Yes.
You know, they want to spend that extra £5 or that extra whatever and experience something that is just unique in a bottle of wine. You know, as a vintage is a great vintage. And as a wine, I think, you know, again, the fruit character, slightly sweetness from the ripeness of the fruit. I mean, there's a lot of wine, you know, in that glass, you know, given obviously that color, but just you know, that vintage, that quality focus that clearly the winemaker is trying to put into its final product. I think it's a really great glass of rosé, if not on the but it's not really powerful, but on the a bit more structured style. You know, it's not just water with a bit of color. There is definitely a bit more oomph and definitely a lot of character in this rosé. So I would translate it as such as exactly a very light red rather than being a very or light a stronger white. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I was gonna say, I mean, the price point is fairly high. I mean, we are in the middle of a cost of living crisis, obviously, but that's not just the reason. The reason is the quality of the wine is high. As we established, it's a Cru Classe, which doesn't really apply to every Provence rosé, what you can see there, but it is definitely a wine which is more than just your average rosé. What I was going to ask, what do you think about the trend that nowadays rosé wines seem to be more and more expensive? Is this something just to do with a branding, marketing, or is it really the demand for rosé growing as such, and it pushes the price up more?
I think marketers has realized and growers have realized that now their sales on rosé start on the 1st of January and finish on the 31st of December. So there's a market, you know, throughout the year. It's not anymore those kind of, you know, 3-4 months from June to September where you would sell your you know, cases and liters and hectoliters and whatever, gallons of rosé. So obviously, as it the rosé wines takes a bit more part of little niche place into the market and consume a little bit of percentage in terms of sales. Those winemaker and estate realize, okay, you know, the money is there, therefore we can grab an extra quid there, an extra quid there, an extra quid there, an extra quid there.
You are a sommelier, a master sommelier. You work with food, and apparently, and I believe as well, rosé is a very food-friendly wine, actually. What would be your choice, really, to go with this one?
It can be, you know, oiled fish that are, you know, charcoaled. It can be lamb or, you know, meat sausages from whatever animals you want to have. It can be greens. It can be, as I said, charcoal or not. It can be pastas. It can be, you know, as French people, we love, you know, charcuterie and all the cured meat, blah, 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 and pâtés and so on and so forth, with that sort of, you know, savory flavors and that savory notes that come from the fruit of this wine. You know, to me, it's a no-brainer.
Okay, shall we move on to the red then? Because we talked about switching up things a little bit in terms of what we would generally do.
Yeah, precisely. I think it's really interesting to get to understand, you know, how wines perform works, but being also understood according to what and when you put them on your palate. So let me elaborate on that. So we're going to test the Chateau Haut-Maurac, so the second wine from the box. So it's a Medoc. It's 2019 vintage. Again, there's nothing much to add on the vintage 19. Great vintage, ripeness, power, acid, longevity. I mean, potential of aging, as well as approachability for some of the estates. I mean, Bordeaux is vast. Bordeaux is 55,000 hectares altogether. The Medoc is probably about 28 to 29. Medoc is the further part, is the northern part, basically. You've got Medoc and then Haut-Maurac, which basically just stops after the last village of Saint-Estèphe. You really move into the Medoc. And Haut-Maurac basically was one of those estates that has been morceled, and put back together by one family, then destroyed by the other, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, its history, I wrote a few things about it. Its history, lively as such. It's a 24-hectare estate, so it's actually quite vast when you think about it, in the scale of things. Obviously, when you think about Burgundy, 24 hectares, entire village, so that's quite vast. Even though slightly small if you want to live off it, especially in Bordeaux. The guy that just bought that is no one else than Olivier Dessel. Is in his 40s, I think. He made a fortune in the frozen food business. Marketing and so on, and then basically he fell in love in wine, and then started to buy his first estate, second estate, third estates. So he runs obviously Miel in the Languedoc-Roussillon, so the sort of art of fortified wine. He has an estate called Jeanfort in Saint-Emilion that, again, very, very serious wines coming from. He's got an estate in Burgundy with an association with a guy from the Northern Rhone. He's got this, and he's got, I think, 2 or 3 other estates that he runs, again, as one entrepreneur. So, he buys the estates, kind of turn them around and produce wines that are, I mean, Jeanfort are stratospheric wines, but this is a great expression for it's original, it's rooted, and it's sort of archetype of what you expect. Here, Merlot dominates, which is very often, we always think left bank Cabernet, but actually, especially the last part of the century, from the 50s, Merlot always took over because it's much more rounder, it's easier to drink, it's also easier to ripen. Cabernet is a pain to ripen. So you always need that extra time for Cabernet to ripen, whereas Merlot, even though to the point where Merlot today is slightly being more eradicated because it gets so warm and so the ripening happens so early that Merlot, when it's time to harvest, it's just too early. They're not ready. So the wines are just too jammy and too alcoholic. So Merlot is starting to face that. Is maybe not the real world and the truth, but slowly being compressed, and the not especially the production, but just the percentage within the cuvée will probably go slowly lower than general. Obviously, Merlot, as we remember that fantastic movie Sideways, especially in the US, was really decimated from that movie, because obviously it's depicted as a non-connoisseur grape variety. But who doesn't like a glass of Merlot? I mean, you can't turn up.
Besides, here we are in Bordeaux, and in Bordeaux everything is a blend, or most things are a blend.
It's precisely, and also that's the beauty. I mean, if you think about it, I'm talking about over ripeness and heat and extra fantastic vintage. But Bordeaux, due to its location, is actually quite cold. It rains every day in Bordeaux. That's the reality of things.
And also, Medoc is very close to the ocean as well. So
Yeah,
it's the closest part to the ocean.
Influences.
So there's a lot of influence from there.
There's a lot of wind. There's, you're not far away from the estuary and from the ocean. You always have the cloud cover. So, it's a slow processing, but still, global warming makes its way. We all know that. And there's days where, it's 40 degrees, 45, and sometimes it can be for weeks. It's not just, it's just the way it is. And unfortunately, due to position, again, when it rains and it's 45 degrees, 4 hours later, if you're lucky, that has dried off. But if it hasn't, then there are nests of rot if you cannot get enough wind to dry off the water and the water kind of get behind the fruit bases, yes, that's it. Buy the crop, see you next year, because that's all rotten. So it's not just it's not easy.
Yes.
nature find ways to really upset you and destroy the work that you might have for a year.
Yeah.
And so, but that's the beauty of it as well.
And that's why wine is not an easy product to produce in the first place, because it has this sort of element, nature, which actually creates one of these, it's unpredictable in many ways.
Valuable.
You can't change it unless
But that's also the interesting aspect of a vintage. From vintage to vintage, the key is to have variations. And if you think about Bordeaux, the Napa Valley Cabernets back in the 80s or 90s, vintage variation didn't really exist. They were always trying to get as ripe as even overripe, super oaked. So from vintage 17 to 18 to 19, you wouldn't actually, in 97, 98, 99, that's what I meant. You wouldn't really see a difference. The one were just, plush, lush, rich, sweet, oaky, and to a certain extent boring. The personality, the soul was gone. They were lifeless. They were just a sort of mind and a recipe as such. We harvest at that level of sugar, we put that amount of new oak, we vinify at that level of alcohol, and so on and so forth. It wasn't gonna, oh, that is too ripe, we need to balance that with something else. No. Maybe the oak treatment, instead of being 100%, would be 50%. No, that wasn't the recipe. It was a recipe. Follow the recipe. It works. We can sell those wines at $50 or 500 or 50 quid on any market in the world, because it's what we do, it's who we are, and that's what we represent. Okay, test those wines today, and that's really interesting, because
now it's changed, isn't it?
but also test the same wines, same vintages nowadays, and you realize that the wines are tired, the fruit is gone, and the oak will not go, because that's not what it does. So you are completely imbalanced wines with that amount of spices dominating, and the fruit is basically wobbling around behind, and it's basically like, okay, nice. Well, not nice, especially when you paid 50 or 60 or whatever pound or dollars you paid for that bottle. So yeah, that's the way it is. Anyway, so here you've got a first clue on the quality of the vintage is definitely the color. I mean, it's beautiful, dark,
it's black. Yes.
deep ruby, even garnet rim. There's a sort of medium viscosity in my glass. It's just kind of running on the walls. The glycerin, so basically alcohol. He says here that it's what, 14? Yeah, it says 14. Well, give or take.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
The French law gives you 10%, which is again on the 19 vintage. Yes, it's a lot. We are used to 12.5 alcohol, and it's what we all like to drink. But you have to take that component in. It's a hot vintage, it's a ripe vintage, it's generous vintage. It's sort of emblematic, and some people will like the vintage more than they will think about the alcohol, because again, at the end of the day, the alcohol doesn't really matter as long as it's integrated. So a bit of air, and then, oh wow, again, it's you smell the concentration. You smell straight away, chocolate, tar, herbal, roses, floral. Then you move on to the sort of dark fruit, dark berries, bit of cassis.
Almost not even merlot, isn't it? I mean, merlot is a little bit more
red normally.
Yes, and here you get that very dark, sort of very ripe fruit.
The merlot is the roses. That's where the merlot indicates its presence, is the roses character. Normally, roses comes really with Nebbiolo.
Yeah.
But here you've got that definitely red, almost crimson. And then there's a savouriness, there's a meatiness, there's an earthiness. So again, in that little glass of wine, there's a lot of kind of concentration, but also a lot of layering. And more you kind of give it a bit of twist, and more you get, flavors coming out. So again, for a Medoc, which is supposed to be the sort of let's break the barrier, the poor bastard of Bordeaux. Excuse my French, but it's true. Again, straight away here you got plenty wine for your money. It's a lot of wine in that glass, a lot of wine.
I was gonna ask you about Cru Bourgeois, because this is Cru Bourgeois, and Cru Bourgeois it has
everything and nothing.
It has its troubled past, isn't it?
It was followed up for 15 years, and then it was abandoned, and then now only the Cru Bourgeois Exceptionnel are basically layered and bottled as such. But
nowadays it's not necessarily it doesn't have the meaning what it used to have.
No, exactly. It doesn't really give you, again, a set of rules to follow and to make sure that the quality is there rather than, there, whatever. It's trying to follow up the estates year by year, and more importantly is ownership, because I think this is where the key is at this stage is that, understanding what Olivier Desalles have done over the last 15 years, and then now what we're trying to do with Chateau Haut-Maurac. I think it's the signature that you expect, that he's taken over, he changed a few things, and now the wines are what they are and what they represent, and there's a good as I said, archetype of what they're supposed to taste like.
Yes.
Great concentration, great vintage appeal. It's not trying to be anything else. It's 2019. You can clearly get that from the color, from the nose, the concentration, the profile, the characteristic, the translation in flavors, and then let's see on the palate.
I already tried the palate, and when you said it's a lot of wine for the money, I completely agree with that, because I think in our Cellar Master membership plan, you get it under £20, and I think under £20 it is a very, very good Bordeaux.
It's the perfect Sunday wine. If you drink 10 pound bottle of wine, during the week, or maybe one or two, whatever, and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to double down on a Sunday. For me, this is the perfect wine at £20. Open it up, a good half an hour, easy, before you drink it. I would give it sometimes. I would make sure also it's not too warm, because again, the rhetoric, I always say the same thing, is we tend to drink red wine far too warm, and unfortunately you get the alcohol coming through, especially if you've got a baby like this at 14. You don't want that. You want a bit cooler, so the fruit concentrates. So coming back to the palate, again, you've got that sort of clean attack and that sort of roundness straight away. It sits on your mid palate, and then all the flavors come through. Again, the berries, the red berries, the blackberries, the currant, and then the spices. It's kind of ripe, dark, and red fruit coming through first, and I insist on ripe. It's not sweet, it's ripe.
Yeah.
So you really have kind of a juicy with a sensation of sweetness, because it's ripe, but it's like red, like fruit you pick on the in nature when you walk or whatever, and you taste them, and they're sweet, but they're not. It's not. I mean, it's fructose, obviously, which you don't have there, but it's that sort of ripeness character, that they come, and beautifully balanced by acidity. So that really gives you what you expect in that sort of, again, approachability, drinkability. And seconds where you taste a glass and you're like, I'm glad to taste another glass.
Yeah.
Of food, that's that attracts quite a large plethora of style. Ragu, obviously stew if you wait for the winter. Pasta dish. You can imagine that with creamy pasta with sausage, with mushroom. Sorry, heaven.
Yes, I you got me at the stew part, because I think that's what it is. I think it needs a bit of oomph from the food as well. I think it's a lovely wine. It does need to be opened up a little bit in advance, because I think it's still a little bit tight.
Which is a good sign that those little pocket or posh of wines,
Yeah.
whatever you can call them, actually, works well because they really maintain the wine at ultimate freshness. To get that tightness really is kudos to those guys, because really well put together.
Obviously, if it's not in one of these boxes but in its bottle, what do you think? How long would it last if we just lay it down a little bit to? I think it's good to drink now. I think it's still we can leave it for another few years, but
No problem. 5 years. Again, that depends what you're looking for in terms of flavor profile. But in terms of pure pressure and ability to age, given the characteristic of the food, of the fruit on the nose and on the palate, and the tannin structure, I mean, the tannins are superbly, ripened, superbly integrated, super soft, but they're there. They're like, hang on a minute, it's sort of wine that you don't drink on its own. You drink with food. It's a food wine. Because what I love in the lengths is that sort of slightly bitterness, but not bitterness, as obviously as a negative point. For me, bitterness is a positive pound, because it's kind of like stone fruit. It's the sort of primary fruit that move into sort of bitterness when you chew it for too long, and that's exactly that. So if you put proteins, meat, sauce, something that's got flavors, this will go away. You won't taste it. We don't want that. But to me, it's the addition of lengths that really is the bitterness all about, and I find that quite exquisite.
And I think again that brings us to the last wine, which is a white wine in this case. And you suggested to do this in the
last, yes, exactly.
It's almost like the old way of tasting wine before it get sort of, I don't know, commercialized. I don't know if it's the right word, but
I mean,
in a commercial aspect, it's white, rosy, and red.
When I go to tastings, and when I go to well, usually when I go for tastings, I taste quite a lot of wines. I have a habit. Even my team, they look at me like I'm an alien, but I always taste red first. I always taste red first. It's a habit, professional deformation as such. It's like some people, you would say, oh, we'll do a vertical. So a vertical in wine is basically you test vintages, some from the older to the youngest, or from the youngest to the oldest. That's two school. And I challenge anyone to come back with their point of view, and then I'm sure we won't be agreeing.
Yes, I think you want to go from the oldest to the youngest, right?
I will always go from the oldest to the youngest.
Yeah.
And to me, it makes sense. The way I argument it is simple. The oldest the wines get usually is much more layered, much more complexity, much more details, and much more eloquence, but fine eloquence will come through. So you need to have a really fresh palate in order to decipher those notes that you might not with an older palate, with a time. So if you start with the youngest, which are bolder, maybe less distinctive, less layered, but richer, bolder, more alcohol, more oak, more fruit, also more modernity to some extent, you tire your palate. And then when you come to the oldest, well, those little details, little flavors, little instants that are there, you might miss them. Simple.
Yeah.
So that's why I would always go oldest to youngest.
And in this case, from red to white to freshen up your palate, bring it back to life.
To maintain the palate, alive, fresh, taut. And it doesn't mean that you have to do it, over the table. And I mean, to be honest with you, when we do lunch or dinner with my wine mate, to be honest, it's anarchy. Someone drink white, red. I'll have that. Whatever we eat, it's we have a expression that said this. It's the sort of the shoemaker that always wear the worst one, or has the worst.
Yes.
It's the same thing here. Is it's people in the wine that either have like broken glasses or can't cook or just do anything and everything that is completely completely
Unprofessional.
adverse to the book and to the rules. Just because nobody's watching to start with, and why not? At the end of the day, it's a glass of wine and some food, and it's all about social and pleasure and blah 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 and friendship and so on. So all about white at this stage is exactly that, is to refresh your palate, but also now that you went to the dark expression of fruit, you put your nose in that, straight away you're gonna be like, oh wow, that's fresh, that's elevated, that's kind of rejuvenating to a certain extent.
It has all that sort of stone fruit and tropical notes, and then the citrus and everything coming through, and then it's just like your brain starts to work
Exactly.
immediately.
Straight away, it's opened, it's fresh, it's forward. I mean, here, when you have a bit of one experience, and drunk few Chardonnay in your life, you translate that as the Chardonnay is singing. It's really kind of textbooks.
Just to say what the third box is Vire-Clesse. Vire-Clesse? Oh,
Vire-Clesse,
do I pronounce it well? And
Justice,
yes, and from Albert Bichot, another household name in the Perfect Cellar family, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, a bit of history. Vire-Clesse, originally you had Macon Vire and Macon Clesse. They were sort of, so in the Macon, so you are south for Burgundy. So obviously, as established, Chardonnay for white wine, Pinot Noir for red. And there is a bit of aligoté. There's a little bit of Gamay also planted in a Pinot Bureau, which is Pinot Gris. But basically, this is the two main grape variety, Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. And then in 99, basically the appellation changed and Vire-Clesse became one entity. So they kind of put the two villages together.
Yes.
And that was done in 99. Kind of one of the latest appellation in Burgundy to be changed and put to the fore into the 21st century as such. Albert Bichot, I mean, there's so much to be said. Albert Bichot, I mean, Bichot is a big business. I mean, it's one business. It's big. Started in 30s with Bernard, I think.
Bernard Bichot, and then his son was Albert.
And then Albert was also the third generation. And basically the third generation is where they started in the 19th century. And then the third generation, this is where things are starting to really kind of take hold. They moved the estate as such and the headquarters to Beaune, where it's still now. And obviously
a little bit northern from where we are now.
Yeah, because they were in the southern part where they were in Macon, I think, when they started. So they moved to Beaune, which is a bit more aristocratic, but also there's much more in the wine business. This is where things are. It's a bit like this kind of the center of operation. So you bottle your wine there, or you send from barrels, but from Beaune. To send it from Macon, Tournu, or the village or the town around is a bit more painful. So the business started to grow from that, and then in the sort of 50s is just after Second World War. Basically, that's where the Bichot have a name of know-how, and they start to buy estates, buy vineyards there, blah blah blah, employ good people, and then the business grow to what it is now. So now they've got vineyards from south to north, like entirely from every single appellation. They own 6 different estates altogether. So in Nuit Saint-Georges, in Centenay, I think in Chablis. I mean, they are. It's a big business. It's a force to be reckoned with. There is, the argument that they might be a bit big to produce, super premium Burgundy. I wouldn't go against this, but what do you translate as super top Burgundy? Of course, if you talk about people like Rousseau, Roumier, and DRC, oh yes, there's no comparison possible. But this is £20, I think.
This is 23.96 in the Cellar Master price.
What I'm trying to say is that this is the beautiful alternative to expensive Burgundy. Burgundy nowadays is a joke. The Côte de Beaune is a joke. We all know that yes, they suffered from different vintage hardness as such, frost, destroying 90%, 95% of the production, and so on and so forth. But nowadays it's also because we're willing to pay, because we want the wines. The wine are stratospheric, but it's just impossible.
Vire-Clesse has started to come into play, as you said. It's a very new appellation as it's in terms of how they form now, but it's actually in my short decade in wine, I started to come across Vire-Clesse more often in the later stages. So in the last few years, it's becoming more and more exciting, maybe because of the price point, or maybe
there is the price, there is, because exactly, you always try to find alternative. I mean, if you think about, again, Burgundy, and especially the Côte de Beaune, for example, very often people stopped Côte de Beaune at Chassagne-Mourac. Then, the village of Centenay that makes white and red was forgotten. Everything that goes after that, Montelly, Marange, you didn't hear of those villages. I mean, to a certain extent, Saint-Aubin was, known. It was, known that it's located not far from Meursault, but it wasn't, what it is now. Nowadays, Saint-Aubin's wines, you find some Saint-Aubin's on the market for £400 a bottle. So, again, that's to me where the answer of such small appellation, a bit less appellation, are today handful, and I'm very pleased to kind of play with in that field, because of course I'd love to experience Chassagne-Mourac, Premier Crus, and Meursault, but first of all, you can't drink that on a daily basis, and you shouldn't either. But on the other hand, it's also not what is all about. This is exactly maybe every month a bottle of that, maybe every 6 months, or maybe every year, and that becomes a real
experience,
exactly, with again some bottle age. Because to me, young wine are young wines, but the capacity of aging one correctly and then enjoying them when they have like 5, 6, 10, 15, 20, maybe 30 years old, it's very humbling to start with, but it's also a complete different time frame, as I said, it's time capsule. So when you go back to this Vire-Clesse, the first thing that for me intrigues me is the color.
Yeah,
it's 2021, and you've got that really kind of light gold. So it to me it translates as, again, the color was taken from the fruit. So the ripeness there is immaculate. They went for pure ripe fruit in order to produce a wine that translates into that color. Otherwise, it doesn't work. That wouldn't be that. So there is no really green tinge. It's definitely, well, slightly green, but it's more gold, light gold, basically.
Yes,
so they're already on that kind of orientation. You're thinking, I'm going to have a white wine that is quite concentrated. Let's check it out. And yes, it is. Even though, again, compared to the red, is fresher. Even though I talk too much, so you didn't have much time to your nose had time to adjust. But again, you got the sort of toast, the bread, the brioche, and then it moves almost straight away into kind of saffron. You have ginger, and then everything comes from white flesh, lemon, exotic touches, definitely a floral touch, a floral tune to it, and then some minerality.
Yep.
It's almost a saltiness to it.
Yes, it's very strangely, or not very strangely, actually. It reminds me almost like slightly oaked Chablis. In a little bit. It doesn't really have that sort of appley style on the nose, but it does have a bit of stone fruit. It has a bit of that sort of
stony minerality.
Yes. That's...
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. For me, Chablis, even on the ripe vintage, as always, something that I pick up out of everything is there's a pear flavor, which I don't get here. At all, at all, at all. But again, that's very personal. We talked about, when we did some from the
Yes.
videos, we talked about, the ability of tasting blind and what you're looking for as your footprint.
Yeah.
Enough, I was doing a big blind tasting this morning with, I think we're tasting 12 wines blind, all red. I think I got 2. Yeah, I mean, it was all over the place. I mean, I found a third one, but I didn't write it down because I thought that's a bit pushy, and it was what I thought it was. But yeah, I found the 2 first one, and then after that, well, to my to my own conscious, 3 wines were Chinese, so it's not something that I test on a daily basis. So I excuse myself. I found the grape variety. I didn't find the country nor the region. So but again, coming back to the wine, what you get on the nose is reflects very well on the planet. Again, you get that sort of ripe, exotic, lush, but again, lemon skin, maybe a slight of orange blossom, and then again the toast, the sort of brioche that Chardonnay delivers with a bit of oak when there's a bit of oak aging. I assume there's probably about 10% of new oak, even a bit less, just to enhance a little bit the best parcel in. But that's not what you want to do. You want to actually a wine that is maintaining that freshness and then living up to expectation for a couple of years. I mean, that again can be drunk in a couple of years max, more. It's not meant to be aged for 15 years. It's not the idea. But as it stands today, again, great complexity, very approachable, beautiful acidity, very refreshing. And this is the point I wanted to make, really early, is that despite having tasted a red before and your palate seems to be tired, this takes everything away and then add another layer. So now you can think, okay, I could actually have another glass of white, or you could actually have a glass of red.
Yeah.
And start again. It's almost cleaning, the cleansing. So in sort of European context, restaurant and blah blah blah, we've always been like, oh yes, you start with a glass of champagne, bubble, or gin tonic, doesn't really matter. And then you go to white, and then you follow with red. White because of the starter, the lightness, the fishes, blah blah blah. And then for meat or stews or whatever, and then you finish with strong reds on the cheese. I change that every day. Not that we start with red as such, but why not? That's kind of red. But the thing is, the white will do the job. Whatever it is, it will do the job because of the acidity. Red wine is not an acidic product. That's not true. That's not what I'm saying. Red wine is very, very acidic as well. It's just that the composure of the wines is not shown. You don't have that kind of sensation of acidity, but acidity is crucial into any given wine, because that's what brings that freshness, that balance. Otherwise it would be just fruit juice, acidulated, and sweet as such, cloying and so on and so forth, whatever the vocabulary you want to use there. So impossible to drink, to be fairly honest. But again, this is what is the beauty of that Macon, is that he has that freshness, that sensitivity, that toughness, basically, that's just going to make it super livable, super approachable. And again, a no-brainer when it comes to finding an alternative to the expensive burgundies of today.
Yes.
Again,
We're still in the £20 zone. So whether you buy it at full price or you're buying it at the cheapest possible price at Cellar Master price in Perfect
but it's
Cellar.
not a cheap wine. Don't get me wrong.
No.
For
But it's a burgundy.
For a lot of people, £20 is a lot of money in a bottle of wine, and I appreciate that. But exactly, it's burgundy, it's Chardonnay, and unfortunately today, if you want to drink that sort of wine, that's what you're going to have to pay. That's a fact. But I think that in terms of pure satisfaction, for Macon Vire 2021, there's plenty wine, in that pouch, in that glass as well, And again, around sort of 12 Celsius, not too cold. Again, same conversation than the red, but opposite. Not too cold, just to get that flavor profile. Again, the plethora of food can come to the fore. You imagine the fishes, yes, but how do you cook it? You you pan fry it, you finish it in the oven, like now chef does, like treat it like meat, or you steam it, you know, for example, or you do a ceviche, or you do a sort of a sushi character, so you know, really raw, beautifully prepared. You can work, you know, again, you know, pasta dish, creamy pasta dish, you know, work wonders. You can, you know, I find, for me, I love mushrooms in general. So you can do whatever you want to do with mushroom, cream, no cream, dried or whatever, you know, with that sort of flavor profile, the toasty, the brioche, you know, tartelette of mushroom, you know, this is just heaven, you know, perfect. But again, because of that acidity, light spicy dish, not going full steam there, but you know, that will definitely help cleaning up and sort of tame a little bit that acid, that heat from the spiciness. And cow's milk cheese, you know, white wine and cheese is a delight. There's no question about it. And some people will say, oh yeah, I prefer it. Yeah, but there's no right wrong. It's just that some white wine works so well with cheeses because they do not create, you know, that sort of sticky tannic structure that you got there. It's really hard to swallow, you know. It's sort of alkaline fine feeling, because the tannins kind of coagulate with the milk and create that sort of really hardcore and really kind of paste that really is hard to swallow and sticks there. And it's actually quite I mean, brie and red wine, for example, is probably one of the hardest match you can. Stronger you're going to go on the red, harder the brie will reply to it, and will retaliate. So it's almost going the opposite, for, you know, splendid white wine, acidic in a freshness aspect. Chenin Blanc, Marsanne Roussanne, Chardonnay, and anything that's got a beautiful drive, that is just, you know, fantastic. Champagne in brie is absolutely stratospheric.
It's actually quite interesting what you said about this wine with the food pairing, and that you mentioned that sort of mushroomy, creamy dish. And I can imagine that very easily with something like this, because it has a little bit of oak, just enough to make it stand up for that. But that, when you said about that sort of fresher style of food to match with something like this because of that high level of acidity, I think it's true as well. I think very easy to drink as well.
Yeah,
and
it's interesting.
It's very interesting to see how these work. My question is, out of the three wines, which one was your favorite, if you can pick one? It's all different, and it's all different for different reasons.
Yeah, they're very, very different. Funny enough, I think the Vire-Clesse is my there.
Is it because you had it last, or is it because?
It's a fair point. But hopefully it showcases that because it's the last and you feel, you know, in tune with the wine and so on and so forth, and your palate kept fresh. And that's exactly what I wanted to showcase in that experiment. So if it's that, yes, and I'm glad it works even better as a point. But I think it's more to do with just the
quality
at the time, the time frame as well of the day, you know, and then sort of the envy behind it. I'm to right now, I feel like I want something a bit fresh and easy, and you know, my palate is starting to get hungry, and I'm thinking, okay, you know, I'd rather go with a glass of wine whilst I'm cooking rather than a glass of red whilst I'm cooking. It's simple as that.
It's actually quite good, because with your way of tasting that white was the last one, I can actually either finish the white now or just go back to the red, because that works perfectly well as well.
It's exactly that, and that's the beauty of it. That's obviously not. Don't say that to your doctor, because he's gonna, you know, the guy talking to is an alcoholic. That could be an outcome. So don't quote me on any of this. You know, I don't teach you anything. I'm just giving you a point of view. But it does work. Yes, indeed.
It does work. I was gonna also say this, that these things now come in a subscription version as well. which means you can still buy them individually whenever you like them. But obviously, if you sign up for a subscription, you don't have to worry about receiving the next one and forgetting about ordering it. And you also get very generous discounts as well. And it comes now in 3 packs, so 300 ml packs inside, or as you can see it behind me, in the big 6 packs. I'm still impressed with the quality of the pouches after, I think this was the 3rd selection which I tasted, and it still delivers the quality what I would expect from a bottle.
There's no deviation there whatsoever. I mean, the Chateau Maurac really showed so much freshness and sort of tightness that it's kudos to this format. I think the pouches and the cardboard around really protects from sunlight, from whatever. So it's really clever. I mean, I keep my boxes in my fridges and get them out when I need it, and they're never too cold. Whatever that is, never too cold.
Yes, so I think it's a very clever way of package these sort of things. And just to finish off with, you guys, if you have Alexa app, you can now listen to Christopher talking about wines on there as well, because we have the Alexa app going.
Right. They asked me to put my beautiful voice and accents on Alexa.
I think they needed someone French. That's why you were chosen.
No, actually, we have decided I'm gonna do them in 3 different languages.
Okay, what was the 3rd one? I mean, the first 2 are obvious, but
Spanish, yeah.
Oh, Spanish. Okay, sorry.
So so anyway, so yeah, we're gonna do that just to basically take the piece.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, you guy, a French guy that's been on these shows for 25 years, trying to speak English with an accent that doesn't want to go anywhere, and a mixture of a little bit of Shakespearean and Diderot, and trust me, it's funny how people kind of, oh, you're French. Yes, I am. That's how did you get that? When I try, no, I don't even try, but I don't feel that my accent is that strong. But yeah, it is.
It is strong. The good thing is that your time in Scotland, you didn't pick up the Scottish part as well, because that would be an absolute craziness when you.
That would be great.
Brilliant.
No, he wouldn't. He wouldn't be. No. Get that. No.
I think I'm just gonna leave this part in, because I think that's quite fun. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay, Csaba, good to see you.
And you, Chris. And
we'll catch up.
Thank you very much, guys, and thank you very much for watching all this. Hopefully somebody gets to the end of this.
Despite the accent and the very bad aspect of talking about wine. I love it, so I can talk, but it's going to cut a lot of things anyway, so it'll be a bit more tighter,
yes. But at the end of the day, hopefully it was good fun, and we learned something about wine as well. And there's a next one coming up. I believe we are on the 27th of September, but we can confirm that in all sorts of social media channels and emails and all that. It's also on Perfect Cellar website. So hopefully everyone will enjoy a nice glass of white, red, or rosé tonight. So
we'll see you then.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
Bye. Thanks very much.